Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, we need to talk about a massive taboo in the personal finance world. It's something literally almost no one mentions when they're grinding away, saving every single penny. We're talking about the reality of hitting your financial independence, your FIRE number, and then deciding to wake up the next morning and go right back to work anyway.
Now, I want you to be completely honest with yourself here. Have you ever daydreamed about that dramatic speech you're going to give your boss when you finally quit? If you're on the path to FI, you've probably got this highly cinematic fantasy, right? You imagine the exact moment your net worth spreadsheet finally flashes green. You picture yourself skipping into the office, slapping down your 2 weeks' notice, and popping a giant bottle of champagne.
We all have that ultimate fantasy, the dramatic exit, the unbridled joy, the whole shebang. But what if I told you that the actual day you officially become a millionaire and achieve financial independence might look incredibly anticlimactic? Seriously, it might just be a random Tuesday. The spreadsheet flashes green and then, you just sort of sit there.
To really understand why this happens, let's look at a real-world example. Meet Jason from the Two Sides of Fi channel. Jason spent years, literally years, obsessively tracking his numbers, optimizing his savings, and dreaming of the finish line. But when his portfolio finally crossed that $1 million FIRE goal, he didn't quit. He just kept working. So now what? Why on earth would someone do that?
Jason actually described this perfectly. He said reaching his FIRE number felt exactly like closing on a house. He joked that he thought there was going to be a laser light show or maybe sharks with lasers, just this ultimate euphoric high. But instead, it just felt like signing a mountain of paperwork. You get the keys, the celebration lasts maybe 5 minutes, and then boom. You're suddenly hit with the realization of all the hard work, the maintenance, and the metaphorical leaky toilets that still lie ahead of you.
The whole problem really boils down to this: planning the escape versus day two. Think about it. We spend thousands upon thousands of hours plotting our escape from the corporate machine. We crunch the numbers, we argue about withdrawal rates, we maximize every tax-advantaged account we can find, but we spend 0 hours planning what we're actually going to do on day two of financial independence. And guess what? When you don't know what you're running toward, you usually just stay put.
And that hesitation leads straight into a very real psychological trap known in the community as one more year syndrome. You hit your number, but you stay because, well, you're terrified. Maybe it's sequence of returns risk, that gnawing fear that the market is going to crash tomorrow and wipe out your entire stash. Or maybe it's a deep identity crisis. Seriously, if you aren't your job title, who are you? That fear completely chains people to their desks, even when they have more than enough money to just walk away.
But for others, like Jason, it isn't just fear, it's a deep sense of obligation. Jason had actually started crossing days off a calendar, counting down a strict 90-day window to his early retirement. But then, the pandemic hit. He worked in the healthcare and diagnostics industry, and suddenly, he was put in charge of project managing one of the very first molecular diagnostics for COVID. So when day zero arrived, instead of leaving, he threw his countdown calendar right in the trash. He told his boss he'd stick around to see the project through, meaning he had to restart his entire emotional countdown from scratch.
Which brings us to a pretty brutal reality check. If your identity is completely tied up in the people you work with and the projects you manage, untangling yourself is going to be painful. If you reach financial independence but you're still working 60 hours a week at a job that makes you miserable simply because you don't know who you are without it, well, you haven't won the game. You're just a wealthy hostage. The gravitational pull of your job will always suck you back in.
So how do we actually fix this exit strategy? We need a massive paradigm shift. If you hit your FIRE number and you decide to keep working, you absolutely have to ensure you're doing it for the right reasons. You need to shift away from a fear-based extension, which is driven by anxiety and a lack of identity, and move towards an intentional extension. This is driven by pure choice, engaging projects, and a comfortable financial surplus.
Let's break down exactly what an intentional extension looks like in practice. Jason kept working for 3 highly intentional reasons. First, meaningful finish lines. He wanted to see that critical pandemic diagnostic project all the way through to completion. Second, unvested equity. He had company equity due to hit his accounts, and it just made logical financial sense to capture it. But the third reason, that is the absolute ultimate cheat code for anyone suffering from pre-retirement anxiety. It's called the buffer.
Okay, let's dive into this buffer strategy because it is frankly brilliant. Since Jason had already hit his required FIRE number, every single dollar he earned during that extra year of working was pure surplus. So, step 1, he took off his strict saver hat and put on a fiscal responsibility hat. Step 2, he used that extra salary to completely cash flow tearing out nasty carpets, putting in new flooring, painting, and buying new furniture for a house they just bought without ever touching his retirement portfolio. And step 3, whatever was left over went straight into a massive guilt-free vacation fund.
But you know the absolute greatest psychological benefit of this buffer? 0%. Do you know what happens to your workplace stress levels the exact moment you realize you don't actually need your paycheck anymore to survive? It plummets to absolute zero.
That 0% stress level is exactly what we call the power of FU money. Working a corporate job becomes infinitely more fun when you know you can literally walk out the door at any second. The dynamic completely shifts. You aren't there because you have to be. You're there because you're actively choosing to be, to fund a very specific, luxurious buffer for your future.
Which brings us to designing your actual exit. I absolutely love this concept. Retirement doesn't have to be a sudden cliff where you drop your laptop and disappear. The final step to surviving an intentional extension is using your remaining time at work to deliberately design your post-fire life. If you don't know what you're running toward, use your final months of employment to figure it out while you're still on the payroll.
It really comes down to deciding what stays and what goes. Take Eric, the other half of the Two Sides of FI channel. He built a highly successful architecture business alongside his YouTube channel. By hitting financial independence, he finally had the leverage to look at his work life and divide it into two simple buckets: what stays and what goes. He wanted to leave behind the stressful client management parts of his job that were dragging him down. But he wanted to keep the creative aspects that actually kept him engaged and fulfilled.
You can use your final year to phase out just like Eric did. Here's how you do it on your own terms. Step down from those demanding leadership roles. Start saying no to projects that completely drain your energy. Use your newfound leverage as a financially independent employee to set hard boundaries on your hours. By taking your foot off the gas before you officially retire, you give your brain the white space it desperately needs to start dreaming about hobbies, travel, and relationships again.
Ultimately, this completely reframes the entire journey. Reaching your financial independence number is not some strict mandate to quit your job the very next day. If you want to stay to finish a meaningful project, or capture equity, or stack up a massive home renovation fund, you are completely allowed to do that. The monumental difference is that you are no longer working from a place of dependence. You are working from a place of absolute power.
Let's summarize the incredible results of choosing an intentional extension. First, it completely removes money as the primary dictator of your life choices. Second, when you extend your timeline intentionally, you strip away the fear of the unknown market. Third, it gives you a much-needed grace period to ease into your new identity outside of your job title. And finally, it builds a bulletproof financial runway that ensures that when you do finally hand in your notice, you never, ever have to look back.
So I want to leave you with a thought to end this explainer. If you hit your fire number today, but forced yourself to work for exactly 6 more months, what luxury or home improvement would you completely cash flow with that extra money? Would it be a massive kitchen remodel, a month-long trip to Italy? Really think about what your intentional buffer looks like. Defining that might just be the absolute key to crossing the finish line without the anxiety. Keep building your foundation and work on your own terms.